Reacting to your UFC hot takes. So starting off, we've got Aljamain Sterling better than Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib Nurmagomedov is a better fighter than what Aljamain Sterling is, in my opinion. However, I can see the argument for having Aljamain Sterling above Khabib all time. Aljamain Sterling has accomplished more in the sport than Khabib Nurmagomedov. I understand Khabib is undefeated. He went 13-0 in the UFC. But let's just go through both guys' accomplishments inside the UFC. So, Khabib Nurmagomedov, former UFC lightweight champion, has got 3 title defenses over Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje. Outside of that, other notable wins are RDA that he has, Edson Barboza, where if you look at Aljamain Sterling, former UFC bantamweight champion, 3 title defenses like Khabib Nurmagomedov, has a better resume. In my opinion, he has beaten the likes of Pedro Munoz, Corey Sandhagen, he's beaten Petr Yan twice, he's beaten TJ Dillashaw, he's beaten Henry Cejudo. Now look, I know there's some asterisks around some of those wins. The TJ Dillashaw win, for example, TJ Dillashaw got injured in that fight against Aljamain Sterling. Nobody knew until that fight started that TJ Dillashaw was injured. So I don't really think you can hold that against Aljamain Sterling. It's not as if Aljo went into that fight and everybody knew that TJ Dillashaw was going to be compromised. Nobody knew until the fight started. The Petr Yan first one, I understand Petr Yan was on his way to beating Aljamain Sterling, but he illegally kneed Aljamain Sterling, which by default, Aljamain Sterling is the winner of that fight. Also, the win against Henry Cejudo, former 2-division UFC world champion. The way he was easily able to submit Corey Sandhagen in there as well. Also, what else Aljamain Sterling has that Khabib doesn't is a win up a weight class. Aljamain Sterling, after he lost to Sean O'Malley, moved up and beat Calvin Kattar in the division above, which is something that Khabib Nurmagomedov just never done. Now, I do think Khabib is the better fighter than Aljamain Sterling, but I am all here for the conversation that Aljo is above Khabib all time. Next hot take is that Movsar Evloev will maul Volkanovski 50-45 in a unanimous decision. I do think Movsar Evloev will beat Volkanovski as of right now. I think Movsar Evloev is the best featherweight right now in that division. I think he's criminally underrated. I understand that he isn't the most entertaining fighter to watch. He is very boring. He actually doesn't have any finish wins inside of the UFC, but there is no denying how good this guy is. He beat Aljamain Sterling, Arnold Allen, he's beaten Dan Ige, Diego Lopez. He's undefeated. He's on a crazy run right now in the UFC. He's going to absolutely dominate Aaron Pico easily in their matchup. Now, if this was a younger, more prime Volkanovski, I would pick him to beat Movsar Evloev because we have seen Volkanovski fight a similar style but up a weight class in Islam Makhachev. But this is an old Volkanovski who has taken a lot of damage in his last 3 fights. I know he beat Diego Lopez, but he got dropped twice in there, took a lot of damage in there. He got knocked out cold by Ilia Topuria, got head kick KO'd by Islam Makhachev. He's taken a lot of damage in his last 3 fights in particular, and he's not getting any younger. Volkanovski, I think, is he 35, 36 years of age, and Movsar Evloev doesn't really have that much damage absorbed in his MMA career. He's a lot fresher than what Volkanovski is. Movsar Evloev is also a really underrated boxer in my opinion. Now, do I think he's going to outstrike Volkanovski? No, if it was just a striking match, obviously you would pick Volkanovski. Volkanovski is the better striker than both of them. But I do think a lot of people underestimate Movsar's ability on the feet. I think he's got decent boxing, and he's a really good grappler that has got really good control when he gets you to the mat. And I think what's going to be able to work for him in the matchup against Volkanovski is when Volkanovski is in these striking exchanges and he is looking to exit, he leans back. And if Movsar Evloev is able to get Volkanovski leaning back as he shoots in for a takedown, not only will it be his momentum, it will also be Volkanovski's momentum while he's moving back. That will just help Movsar Evloev get the takedowns. I just think, timing-wise, it's Movsar Evloev's time, and I think he would beat Volkanovski. Now, do I think it would be a dominant 50-45? No. I think it would be a competitive fight, but I do think Movsar would beat Volkanovski. Next up, we've got Dustin KO's Topuria. Now, I would love to see this fight. Dustin Poirier, Ilia Topuria, 2 of the best boxers right now inside of the UFC. This would make for a really interesting matchup, but Ilia Topuria would beat Dustin Poirier in my opinion. Ilia Topuria's boxing is just much better than what Dustin Poirier's is. Dustin Poirier does struggle with the straight shots as well, and Ilia Topuria does land really good straight shots. And the fact that I think Ilia would do a good job of backing Dustin Poirier up. And Poirier, when he is backed up, he does have his hands down low, but that does work for him at times. I mean, when you look at the Benoit St. Denis fight and the fact that he's a southpaw fighter, it could give Ilia Topuria some problems in there. It definitely is a different look, and Dustin Poirier can crack. This guy does hit really hard in either of his hands, but yeah, whenever he is backed up, his hands do tend to drop, and that's where he lets that right hook go. And we see Michael Chandler. If Michael Chandler had have stuck to throwing straight shots when he had Dustin Poirier backed up in their fight, even Poirier himself admitted it, he probably would have got stopped. Ilia Topuria's just his footwork as well. I think it would be really hard for Poirier to just figure out the puzzle to be able to land shots on someone like Ilia Topuria. Ilia's also got a really good jab that I think he would utilise really well against Dustin Poirier. I think he would win the foot battle between Poirier, and that's so important, as Ilia is an orthodox fighter, Dustin Poirier is a southpaw fighter, and I think Ilia Topuria would do a really good job with kicking low. Now obviously the fact that they're in different stances would mean that Ilia would be using his rear leg to kick Dustin Poirier's inside leg, but I think Ilia Topuria can make the adjustment to be able to kick off his lead leg to Dustin Poirier's leg outside of his calf. I just think Topuria's striking, his boxing is just too much for Poirier. I think he would just get caught with the straight shots, and I actually think Ilia would knock out Poirier inside 2 rounds. Next up, we have got DC is higher on the GOAT list than Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't really think this is a hot take, to be honest. I think Daniel Cormier is one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC. I think he's extremely disrespected what this guy's been able to do. Again, he's accomplished more in the UFC than Khabib Nurmagomedov. I understand Khabib was undefeated, and that's a really good stat to have, but realistically, Daniel Cormier has been in there, more proven and tested against better fighters, in my opinion. I think he's, in terms of the amount of quality fighters that both guys have faced and the quantity of them, it is in favour of Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier, a former UFC light heavyweight champion with multiple title defences, a former UFC heavyweight champion as well, and he was able to knock out the heavyweight GOAT in Stipe Miocic to get that belt. I just think Daniel Cormier, in terms of accomplishments, I just think he's done more than Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't think this is a crazy take. I don't even think this is a hot take. Moving on, we've got another Khabib Nurmagomedov hot take. This one says that Dustin Poirier is higher on the GOAT list than Khabib. I know Dustin didn't win the belt, but he has beaten better opponents than Khabib Nurmagomedov. Look, Dustin Poirier has a sleeper resume. Poirier is easily the best fighter to never win the undisputed title. Obviously, a former UFC interim title, but just going through his resume quickly, he's beaten Benoit St. Denis, Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor twice, although the third one, can we really count that? He's beat Dan Hooker, Max Holloway twice, Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, Anthony Pettis, Bobby Green. I mean, that there is a sleeper resume. Now, obviously, I don't think he's above Khabib Nurmagomedov all time. The fact that Khabib was the undisputed champion, did have a couple title defenses, and he beat Dustin Poirier fairly easy. Also, Dustin Poirier does have quite a lot of losses in his UFC career. Some ones that stick out are like his loss to Michael Johnson, where he was KO'd in the first round, which just isn't a good look. I understand that Dustin Poirier has a really good resume, but the fact that Khabib Nurmagomedov was undisputed with title defenses, and how dominant he was in his fights as well, and the fact that he dominated Dustin Poirier himself, personally, I wouldn't have him above Khabib Nurmagomedov. I do think this is a hot take. Next up, we have got, if Pantoja moved up to the featherweight division and fought prime Conor McGregor, Pantoja would win. Now, this is an interesting one. I think this is another hot take. Conor McGregor would just be too big for Pantoja up at featherweight. I mean, McGregor's fought as high as welterweight before. This would be a big jump up for Pantoja. Skill for skill, if Pantoja was the same size as McGregor, you're probably right, because I think McGregor would really struggle with the grappling of a Pantoja, and the fact that Pantoja is such a submission threat when the fight hits the mat, and how good at controlling his opponents he is, that McGregor would really struggle with that. But the fact that Pantoja is a flyweight, would be jumping up to the featherweight division, and McGregor would be cutting down from God knows what weight to make featherweight. By the time he rehydrates, he'd be massive in there against Pantoja. And Pantoja, I know he is just like a marauder. He's a marauder, and he sticks his head down, he throws his kicks, and he blitzes his punches and tries to get in. But the way Pantoja was moving in the Kai France fight, for example, dipping his head down, McGregor would blast him with an uppercut or a knee. I think McGregor's like fluid movement as well on the feet, I think he would time Pantoja. I think he would crack him, and Pantoja's chin, I think, wouldn't hold up. I know he's got a good chin, but he'd be up there at featherweight again with McGregor, who has knocked out lightweights, has put down welterweights. It's just too much of a jump up in terms of weight. Although skill for skill, skill set versus skill set, if both guys were the same size, I probably would pick Pantoja to win. Next up, we have got Pantoja submits Joshua Van in the first. So Pantoja versus Joshua Van is definitely going to be the fight to happen next after UFC 317, where Joshua Van beat Brandon Royval and Pantoja defended his belt against Kai France. They did have that face-off. It's probably one of the biggest fights in flyweight history, if we're being honest. There seems to be a lot of hype going into this fight. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Pantoja will beat Joshua Van. Now, whether he does it in the first, I'm not sure. I do think Pantoja will finish Joshua Van. I think he will submit him. I think Pantoja won't give Joshua Van the respect that he deserves when he gets in the cage. Now, Joshua Van does have good takedown defense at 81%, but he's never really been in there with a grappler like Pantoja. And when I say Pantoja will just not give him respect, is we even see him do at the Kai France. Pantoja will walk forward, throw his shots, throw his kicks, and just walk into a takedown. Like, we literally seen him quite literally run into a takedown against Kai France. He won't show Joshua Van the respect that Joshua Van has been given from other opponents. He won't stand there and let Joshua Van get into a groove. He's going to come out there and look to bulldoze Joshua Van, get round his waist, get him down, get to his back, and submit him. And I think he will do that. Now, will it be in the first? I think the first might be a bit unlikely. Like, Joshua Van is good, and if Joshua Van can keep it standing, I think Pantoja is in for some problems on the feet. However, I think Pantoja's experience and just where he's at mentally, like, it seems like he's going out there with a point to prove every time now. And I think his experience, his fighting style, the level of grappling that he has, I think he will submit Joshua Van. I just don't think it'll be in the first. Next up, we have got Topuria could beat some boxers in a ring. Look, I understand Topuria is the best boxer inside of the UFC, and he does have some really good boxing, and I agree, he could definitely beat low-level boxers. But if you're talking about people that like the Devin Haney's, the Ryan Garcia's, the Shakur Stevenson, I'm trying to think who would be near his weight. No, because actual boxing is so different. The way you stand, the way you move, how far apart your feet are. It's just a completely different sport. No MMA striker, boxer in particular, can move over and beat these elite guys, in my opinion anyway. No elite boxer is going to lose in a boxing fight to an MMA fighter. It's just not going to happen. Unless it's maybe like in the heavyweight division where, say, like a Derek Lewis gets involved and throws a big haymaker and cracks him. Maybe that could happen, but in the lighter divisions, I just don't see it. Yes, Topuria is a really good boxer. He's the best boxer in the UFC. But in boxing, it's just a completely different game. And I think Topuria wouldn't beat any of those elite guys. Like I said, I think he could beat lower level boxers, but I can imagine you're thinking that he'd be in there with the elite guys, and I just don't think he beats them. And finally, we have got Nate Diaz could have beaten Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I have seen this take quite a lot, actually. A lot of people saying that Nate Diaz could have beaten Khamzat Chimaev. In my opinion, no. Yes, Nate Diaz is extremely tough and durable. He's a really good, well, I don't want to say a really good boxer, but he is a good boxer. And if Khamzat Chimaev couldn't get him out of there, and he faded like we have seen him fade before, and wasn't able to get Diaz down, I think he would be in trouble with Nate Diaz, like pity patter, just volume style of boxing. However, Khamzat Chimaev would ragdoll Nate Diaz. I know he's got good jiu-jitsu off his back, but Khamzat Chimaev would have absolutely destroyed Nate Diaz, in my opinion, even on the feet as well early on. Khamzat's a pretty decent level striker, and he does hit hard as well. He would have just ragdolled him. I think he would have smoked Nate Diaz really early on, in my opinion. But let me know your opinions on these hot takes in the comments below. Make sure to drop your MMA hot takes in the comments for part 2. And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Thank you for the support, and I'll see you all again in the next one.